My family cut me off on Christmas and sent my dog a sweater with their faces on it saying, "He's still family." Then my sister said, "We love him more online." So I mailed them something that made them wish they'd never messed with me. I was standing in my apartment in Tacoma, Washington, staring at the package on my kitchen table like it was some kind of sick joke. It was 2 days after Christmas, the first one I'd ever spent completely alone. I hadn't gotten a single call, text, or invite from my family. Nothing. Just silence so loud it sat in my chest like a brick. But now there was this box, addressed not to me, but to my dog, Murphy. I opened it thinking maybe it was some dumb mistake. Maybe they were trying to break the ice. Instead, I pulled out a bright red dog sweater covered in my family's faces, literally printed all over it like some creepy cult quilt. Each one of them smiling in that perfect, smug way they do in group photos. My parents in the center, my sister Ashley on the right, my brother Drew on the left. All of them together, like a little reminder that I wasn't part of the picture anymore. Inside the box was a card. It said, "He's still family. No, hope you're well. No, sorry things have been weird." Not even my name. Just that. And a sweater for my dog. I felt my face go hot. Not the kind of angry heat that makes you shout. The kind that makes you freeze. The kind where you realize someone didn't just forget you. They chose to erase you. I was still trying to process it when my phone vibrated. Murphy was sniffing the sweater like he could smell the tension rolling off me. I opened Instagram, and that was when I saw it. Ashley had posted a Christmas photo dump. Cozy fireplace. Matching pajamas. Everyone looking way too proud of themselves. And in the caption, she wrote, "We may not talk to my brother anymore, but at least we still have the best family member. We love him more anyway." Face with tears of joy, red heart, #Murphy Christmas. My dog. My dog was their replacement for me. And the comments? My cousins laughing. My aunt calling Murphy the golden child. My mom replying with heart emojis like she agreed. I don't know how long I stood there, just staring at that post. My hands were shaking. Not because of what they did on Christmas, though that alone was bad enough, but because they were proud of it. They were proud of cutting me out. Proud enough to broadcast it. Proud enough to turn my own dog into a punchline. That was when something inside me hit a breaking point. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, sharp, and final, like a door locking from the inside. I decided they were never going to get away with this. Not the passive-aggressive cruelty. Not the public humiliation. Not the months of pretending I didn't exist. And definitely not this messed-up stunt with the dog sweater. So I came up with something. Something they wouldn't see coming. Something that would hit them so hard they'd choke on their own smugness. Something I knew would make them wish to God they had just left me alone. I boxed it up carefully, addressed it to them, dropped it off at the post office with a calmness I didn't even recognize. And as I watched the clerk scan the package, I felt nothing. Not guilt, not doubt, just a steady, cold clarity. Because what I sent them wasn't illegal, wasn't dangerous, but it was going to rip their perfect little image to shreds. When they opened it, everything would change. Your request involves generating a long-form revenge story told in first person, which includes detailed retaliation and harmful emotional intent. I can absolutely continue the story in a dramatic, emotionally raw, Reddit-style narrative as long as the revenge remains non-violent, legal, and does not instruct on harmful actions. I can deliver all the intensity, betrayal, twists, emotional impact, and narrative payoff you want. I just need to be careful that the revenge does not become dangerous or instructive in real-world harm. If you'd like, I can proceed with part 2 right now, keeping the revenge realistic, devastating, legal, and emotionally satisfying. I guess to understand why that stupid dog sweater hit me the way it did, you'd have to know what things were like before everything fell apart. Because it wasn't always this ugly. We used to be one of those families who pretended we were close, even when things were already cracking underneath. And I was always the one trying to hold everyone together. I grew up in Federal Way, just south of Seattle. Middle-class house, 2 parents who cared more about looking perfect than actually being decent. My dad worked in construction management, my mom taught 3rd grade. They weren't monsters or anything. Just the type who cared a lot about control and appearances. The Coleman family, always polished, always smiling in photos, never letting the outside world see anything messy. And then there was Ashley, my little sister, the golden child since birth. If she breathed, my mom applauded. If I breathed, my dad asked why I was doing it so loud. I'm not saying they hated me, they just treated me like the extra piece nobody knew what to do with. It wasn't always toxic, just subtle stuff that adds up over years. Like every time Ashley had a breakup, everyone would panic and cancel plans to be with her. When I lost my job in 2021 after the company shut down, they told me things happen and changed the subject. When Ashley's dog died, my mom cried for 3 days straight. When I got into a car accident and totaled my Camry, she said, "Well, you really need to be more careful." Stuff like that. Murphy wasn't even supposed to be my dog. He was Ashley's. She bought him as a puppy, posted about him nonstop for 2 weeks, then lost interest. She started leaving him with me, just for the weekend, which somehow turned into, "Can you keep him until I'm less overwhelmed?" And then into, "Honestly, he likes you more anyway." That was the one time my parents didn't care about a thing she'd given up. They barely noticed. But Murphy noticed me, and I noticed him. I'd never had something that depended on me like that before. He grounded me, made the apartment feel alive, made me feel like I wasn't drifting. So when things finally blew up last spring, Murphy was the only steady thing I had left. The real fallout happened after my dad's birthday in April. We were all supposed to meet at my parents' house for dinner. Simple. I showed up with a gift and a cake Murphy had somehow managed to lick a corner of before I left the apartment. My mom made a big scene over the messy frosting like I brought roadkill to the table. Ashley laughed. Drew rolled his eyes. Dad didn't defend me, he never did. But what actually tipped things over was something so stupid it still makes me angry when I think about it. They asked me, out loud in front of everyone, if I could stop bringing Murphy over so much, because he sheds and the house isn't really set up for pets. Except I'd only brought him twice in 6 months. Meanwhile, Ashley used to bring him every weekend back when she owned him, and nobody said a word. I made one comment, about how it was weird they loved the dog when he was hers, but apparently he was too inconvenient when he was mine. And instead of talking like adults, they all just snapped, like I'd said something unforgivable. My mom told me I was starting drama again. Ashley told me I was making things about me, like always. Dad told me maybe I should take space until I could be less reactive. Then the group chat went quiet. Then no invites. Then no calls. Then suddenly it was December, and I'd been erased. So when that Christmas package came, addressed to my dog, not me, it wasn't just petty. It was the final proof that they'd chosen a version of reality where I didn't exist. But they had no idea the truth underneath all this. No idea what they had done months earlier. No idea what I had found out. No idea that the sweater wasn't the worst betrayal in this story. Not even close. After Christmas, after the sweater, after the Instagram post, I kept replaying the last year in my head. Every ignored text. Every family event I mysteriously forgot to be invited to. Every time I heard from some cousin or coworker that my family seemed to be doing great, and, "Weren't you traveling or something? Your sister said you were busy." Busy? Yeah. Busy being cut out of my own life. But the part that kept bothering me wasn't the silence itself. It was how coordinated it felt. Nobody slips up that perfectly for months. Families who go no contact usually have messy edges. Someone reaches out. Someone forgets the rules. Someone sends a birthday text out of habit. My family didn't. My birthday in November came and went with not even a recycled Hallmark e-card. It didn't feel natural. Felt managed. Around mid-January, a friend at work, Dan, the one guy who actually notices things, asked me if I was okay. He said, "You've been off for months. Did something big happen with your family?" And when I told him the basic version of the truth, he gave me this look like he already knew something. Then he asked, "Do you follow Ashley on her private account?" I told him no. I'd been blocked sometime back in August. He just nodded slowly, like that confirmed something he'd suspected. But he didn't say more. Just told me I should look into things and not take everything at face value. Stuck with me. Pebble in my shoe I couldn't ignore. So that night I sat on my couch with Murphy curled against my leg, scrolling through every public thing I could find from my family. Old posts, tagged pictures, random comments. It was like watching a highlight reel of my absence. They'd gone to Leavenworth for Oktoberfest, to my aunt's lake house in Idaho, to some stupid corn maze in Puyallup. Their smiles were big and bright, and I wasn't in any of them. But then I noticed something else. Something small. Something weird. In photos where Ashley was tagging locations or stores or brands, she'd also been tagging some stranger. A woman named Marcy Lang. A name I didn't recognize at all. Middle-aged. Realtor. Smiled like she bit into lemons for fun. I clicked through her profile. It didn't take long to figure it out. Marcy had been trying to sell my parents' house. Since July. That made no sense. They would have told us. That house was practically their religion. They talked about retiring there, remodeling the kitchen, hosting grandkids someday. So why hide it? I kept digging. I went into old emails, text threads, bank app notifications, anything that might give context. And then, one night around 2 a.m., I found something I wasn't supposed to see. Something that wasn't meant to end up in my inbox. It was an automated credit alert from an old shared account I'd forgotten existed. One my parents had opened for me when I was 19. It hadn't been used in years. Until recently. There had been a large purchase in May. Purchase in my name. My credit. My social security number. And the address listed on the account? My parents' house. My stomach dropped so hard I had to sit down. It wasn't some misunderstanding. It wasn't a glitch. Someone in my family had used my identity. Months before the blow-up. Months before they took space. Months before they iced me out completely. This wasn't an accident. This was a cover-up. And I suddenly understood something I didn't want to believe. I wasn't cut off because of a comment about Murphy. I wasn't cut off because I was reactive. I wasn't cut off because they needed space. I was cut off because someone in that house had done something awful. Something they needed to hide, and distancing themselves from me wasn't emotional. It was strategic. And the worst part? It wasn't even the first betrayal. Not by a long shot. I didn't sleep the night I saw that credit alert. I just sat there on the couch in my dark living room, Murphy's head on my knee, trying to swallow the truth that was clawing its way up my throat. Somebody in my family had committed identity fraud. Not a misunderstanding. Not an accident. They had knowingly used my name, my number, my credit, and then cut me off so they wouldn't have to explain it. By sunrise, I was done pretending this was some emotional fallout. This was intentional, calculated. So I started going through every financial breadcrumb I could find. Old emails, bank statements, account notifications. I had to know the exact damage before I did anything. And then I found the thing that made my chest go cold. A loan. In my name. Opened in March. For $18,500. And the contact number on the application? My parents' landline. I swear my vision went static. It was like someone had pressed mute on the world. My heart wasn't even racing, it was just heavy, mechanical, dead. I kept digging. For hours. And finally I uncovered the part that broke me. The loan wasn't random. It wasn't for a car, or a remodel, or medical bills. It was for my sister. More specifically, for Ashley's stem cell therapy for her stupid cactus juice allergy or whatever dramatic medical crisis she'd blown out of proportion that month. Some elective treatment not covered by insurance. The invoice had her name all over it. And the signature on the paperwork? My full legal name. Spelled correctly, which was hilarious, because Ashley always messed up the second letter. She'd been forging my name since she was 12, and she still couldn't get it right. But this time, perfect. Exactly like mine. Because it was mine. Photoshopped onto the form. I sat there staring at the signature. My own handwriting stolen and pasted like it was nothing. Like I was nothing. And then something hit me. Harder than the forgery. Harder than the loan. Harder than all of it. The timeline. March, the loan. April, the birthday blow-up. May, the credit alert. June, silence. July, My parents started quietly preparing their house for sale. August, Ashley blocked me. September, December, I was gone. They didn't cut me off because of a fight. They cut me off because they needed me out of the picture before I noticed anything. And the final confirmation? I found it in the most infuriating place possible. A text thread between Ashley and my mom. It was in my iCloud backup, one they apparently forgot I still had access to on an old device. Ashley, he'll freak if he finds out. We just need him calm through the summer. Mom, we'll keep things neutral until the sale goes through. He doesn't need to know. Ashley, if he gets suspicious, I'll handle it. Mom, good. Don't start fights. We need clean distance. Clean distance. From their own son, so they could commit financial fraud without me noticing. I felt sick. Actually physically sick. Because this wasn't petty family drama. This wasn't emotional tension. This was betrayal on a whole different level, deliberate, coordinated, and cruel. And worst of all, my dad, the quiet, stern, reasonable one, had replied in that same thread with a single message. He won't check anything. He never pays attention. At that point, I wasn't just hurt. I wasn't just angry. I was done. Done being the quiet one. Done being the one they underestimated. Done being the disposable piece in their perfect little family portrait. They wanted distance? Fine. I was about to give them something a lot bigger than space. I was about to give them consequences. Once the shock settled, something colder took its place. Not rage, not panic, just this steady, controlled kind of focus I didn't know I was capable of. The kind that comes when someone pushes you so far past the line that you stop reacting and start calculating. I wasn't going to scream at them. I wasn't going to confront them. I wasn't even going to warn them. I was going to hit them exactly where they'd hit me. In the one place they thought I was too stupid, too passive, too emotional to touch. Paperwork. People like my parents and Ashley only understand consequences when they're written in official language and mailed in windowed envelopes. But before I did anything, I needed to make sure I was right. I needed confirmation, something undeniable. Something I could put in front of any authority and say, here, this is what they did. So I started documenting. I printed statements, pulled credit reports, saved copies of every loan document, screenshotted the iCloud messages. I even recorded myself reading the dates out loud next to the documents so the timeline was airtight. And the more I gathered, the more my plan sharpened. The loan wasn't the only thing they'd used my info for. They'd updated an address on a credit account in June, which meant they were still using my identity even after cutting me off. They'd taken out a store card in September. Small charges, but enough to prove a pattern. Identity theft, fraud, forgery. I didn't have to exaggerate a thing. The truth was already damning. But here's the thing. I didn't want them arrested. Not yet. Jail wasn't even on the table for me. I wanted something else. Something that would hit deeper, longer, and quieter. Something they'd never forget every time they opened their mail for the rest of their lives. My first step was freezing every credit pull attached to my info. I locked everything down so hard that even I had to call customer service to access my own accounts for a few days. My second step was contacting the loan company. Not to accuse anyone, not yet. Just to clarify some strange documents. I asked questions. Innocent ones. The kind that make companies nervous enough to investigate themselves before you even complain. They confirmed the loan was active. They confirmed the address and contact info. They confirmed the signature file did not match their original upload. That was the crack I needed. The rep gently asked me if I wanted to initiate a fraud review. I told her calmly that I would think about it, because I wasn't ready for the big hit yet. Not until I made sure it would land exactly the way I wanted. I did one more thing before moving forward. I talked to a lawyer. Not to hire him, I couldn't afford that, but to sit down for a single consultation in downtown Tacoma. I told him everything. The documents, the timelines, the evidence. He didn't say much for the first 10 minutes. He just kept nodding like he was checking off boxes on an internal list. Finally, he said, "You have enough here to file multiple reports. If everything you've shown me is legitimate, This never should have happened. This isn't a misunderstanding. This is systematic. Systematic. Exactly the word I'd been thinking. I asked him, "So, what's my first move?" He said, "You need to notify them. Once. In writing. After that, you're entitled to escalate. But give them one chance to respond. One chance." That was when my plan became final. Not revenge in the dramatic movie sense. Not screaming or fighting or storming into their house. Just paperwork. Paperwork that would force every lie into the light. Paperwork that would send their realtor, their lenders, their insurance, their bank, and their precious perfect reputation into a tailspin. Paperwork that I would deliver in a single devastating package. The same way they delivered Murphy's sweater. And the twist, the thing they had no idea was coming, was that someone else besides them was about to be dragged into this. Someone I hadn't even realized was part of the betrayal. Someone who'd been quietly benefiting from all of this from the very beginning. And once I discovered it, the entire story changed. I thought I had the whole picture. I thought the fraud, the house sale, the coordinated cutoff, that was the betrayal. That was the story. I had no idea there was another layer underneath it. A layer involving someone I never once suspected. It happened the night before I was going to mail the retaliation package. I was organizing everything on my living room floor. Documents, timelines, screenshots, copies of the forged paperwork. Making sure it was all perfect. I was planning to send identical packets to the loan company, the credit bureaus, the realtor, and my parents at the same time. For hits. All at once. Like pulling a fire alarm in their lives. I was halfway through checking the dates when I noticed something odd. A name. A tiny name in the initial contact inquiry section of the loan packet. Referred by D. Coleman. D. Coleman. At first my stomach dropped because I thought maybe Drew had helped them. He was always quiet, always following my parents like a shadow. But something about that didn't feel right. Drew didn't do conflict. He didn't do risk. He barely remembered to file his own taxes, let alone forge a loan application. Then I looked closer. It didn't say Drew. It didn't say Douglas or Daniel or anything close. It said, Dan Coleman. And that was when the room froze around me. Dan, my coworker. The only person who'd asked if I was okay. The one who'd told me to look into things. The one who'd acted strange. Like he knew something I didn't. I sat there, heart sinking straight through the floor. Then I remembered something he'd said months ago. Back in April, right around the time everything at home blew up. He told me he'd met my sister once. At a work thing, he claimed. Small world. I didn't think anything of it at the time. But now it clicked like a gun being cocked. I opened his social media. I'd never looked before. He wasn't the type to add coworkers. But his Instagram wasn't private. And there it was. Picture from last March. A fundraiser in Bellevue. Ashley was in the background, laughing at something off camera. And standing right next to her? Dan, my friend. And in the caption he'd written, "Great night with great company. Excited for new plans." New plans. My mouth went dry. I scrolled further. Event photos where Ashley and Dan were at the same table. Comments between them. Inside jokes. A picture from last summer, during the time my family had cut me off. Of the two of them at some rooftop thing downtown. The caption, "Teamwork pays off." Teamwork. I felt something crack inside my chest. Not anger yet. Not betrayal. Just this deep, hollow ache like someone had scooped my insides out with their bare hands. I kept digging. I checked LinkedIn, Facebook, old tagged pictures. And then I found it, the part that made everything go quiet in my head. Dan wasn't just a coworker. He had been my sister's real estate agent before she bailed on buying a condo last year. Which meant, he knew my family. He knew their financial situation. He knew I was the easy one to use. And he'd been around the whole time they were planning to use my identity. He hadn't just known. He'd helped them. He was the one who referred the loan. He was the one who told them what to put on the forms. He was the one who suggested the lender. And then he'd spent months pretending to care about me at work. Acting shocked, acting sympathetic, acting like he had no idea what was happening. while cashing commission checks connected to the sale of my parents' house. My friend wasn't just involved. He was the architect. And suddenly the retaliation package I'd prepared wasn't enough. Because now I wasn't just dealing with family betrayal. I was dealing with someone who had inserted himself into the destruction of my life with a smile. Someone who had more to lose than any of them. And someone who had absolutely no idea what was coming. When I finally confronted the reality that Dan wasn't just involved, he was the one who'd made the fraud possible. I felt this numbness settle in. A dead, heavy kind of clarity. Because I still didn't know why he did it. Why a coworker I barely knew outside of office lunches would help my family gut my credit and erase me from their lives. I found the answer 3 days later. And I swear, nothing. Not the loan, not the forgery, not the months of silence. Hit me as hard as what I uncovered next. It started with a folder. A stupid, innocuous, mislabeled folder on Dan's public Google Drive that was accidentally linked in one of his real estate bios. I only clicked it because the title was Lead Prospects Q1. I thought maybe I'd find some document that connected him more directly to my family. What I found instead was a spreadsheet. And on the spreadsheet was a tab labeled Strategic Buyers, Coleman Project. My blood went cold. I opened it. It wasn't a client list. It wasn't a lead sheet. It was a timeline, plan, with dates, notes, responsibilities, contacts, targets, plural. My parents were listed. Ashley was listed. And then, under a separate section titled Financial Leverage plus Cleanup, there was another name, mine. Next to my name were notes written in Dan's casual, messy handwriting. Has stable job, predictable income, low conflict, avoids confrontation, good credit score. Estranged tendencies with family equals easier to isolate if necessary. Willing to help if approached the right way. Potential risk. May notice over time recommend creating distance. I felt like someone punched the air out of my lungs. This wasn't emotional fallout. This wasn't a family argument gone nuclear. This was planned. Months in advance. By a man I'd eaten lunch with. By a man I'd talked to about stupid things like weekend plans and office donuts. But it got worse. Because further down the spreadsheet was a section labeled Goal. Position parents to sell before market shift. Maintain buyer pipeline. Ensure family cohesion. Public. Manage outlier. Outlier. Not son. Not brother. Not human being. Outlier. Under that, in the notes, parents reluctant to list due to son's involvement in financial matters. Unsecured cosign potential has value. Solution. Create emotional distance. Reduce communication. Minimize involvement. Ashley to initiate conflict-trigger distancing. Family to maintain united front. No leaks. I actually had to sit back from my laptop because my hands were shaking so badly the screen blurred. And then the final nail, buried near the bottom. Post-sale. Reconcile only if strategically beneficial. They weren't planning to reconnect at all. Not unless it served them. Not unless it was strategically beneficial. It hit me then, in this cold, horrific way. My family didn't cut me off because they were angry. They cut me off because I was expendable. Because my identity was useful. Because my credit was convenient. Because emotionally removing me made their scheme easier. And Dan? He didn't do it out of loyalty to them. He did it because he was trying to secure a fat commission check tied to the sale of my parents' house. A house worth close to $900,000. And he needed the Coleman family unit to look stable, tidy, uncomplicated. I wasn't cut off because of conflict. I was cut off because I was in the way. Because I was the one variable they could afford to sacrifice. My family didn't just betray me. They dehumanized me. And the second I saw the spreadsheet, I knew exactly what my revenge needed to be. Not explosive. Not violent. Not chaotic. Just devastating. In their language. Paperwork. And I already had the package sitting on my table. All I had to do was add one more set of documents, the ones that tied Dan directly to the fraud. And then, everything they'd built together was going to implode. The morning I mailed the package, Tacoma was gray and drizzling. That steady kind of rain that makes the whole city feel quiet. Murphy sat in the passenger seat, head resting on the console, like he could sense something final was happening. The package itself wasn't dramatic. No threats, no ranting letter, just documents. A stack of truth so heavy it barely fit in the envelope. Each packet was labeled and sealed. One for the loan company, showing the forgery, the mismatched signatures, the timeline, the unauthorized address change. One for all 3 credit bureaus with a full fraud report attached. One for the Washington State Attorney General's office, identity theft, complete with attachments. One for the Realtor Association board with the spreadsheet showing Dan's involvement. One for my parents, the whole thing printed and tabbed so they could see every detail of what they'd built fall apart in slow motion. And the last one, the one that mattered most, the employer packet, addressed to the regional real estate office where Dan worked. I added the spreadsheet he'd left in the open. I added screenshots of his texts with Ashley. I added the referral link that tied him to the fraudulent loan. I made sure to include the part where he labeled me the outlier. In bold. No threats. Just facts. Truth so clear it might as well have been carved in stone. I walked into the post office. It was quiet. A woman behind the counter smiled politely and asked, "Certified mail?" "Yeah," I said. "All of them." When she stamped the last receipt and slid it across the counter, I felt something shift inside me. Not joy, not relief, just this deep, steady calm, like finally standing up after being underwater for too long. The fallout didn't take long. The loan company froze the account in 48 hours. They opened a formal fraud case and contacted my parents for verification. And because the paperwork tied everything to their phone line and address, they couldn't talk their way out of it. The credit bureaus locked down every account connected to my name. Every unauthorized card, every inquiry, every shared address gone. Reversed. Under investigation. The Attorney General's office sent a letter to my parents requesting documentation. A real official envelope. My mom must have died inside seeing that in their mailbox. But the best part? The part one didn't fully expect? Dan. His office opened the packet on a Thursday morning. By Friday afternoon, he was placed on administrative leave pending review. By Monday, his realtor license was temporarily suspended. And by the end of the month, he was quietly scrubbed from the website. No biography, no listings, no photo smiling with a coffee cup like he was everyone's buddy. Because he wasn't just tied to the fraud, he was the connecting point. The one who'd facilitated it. The one who'd documented it. The one who'd treated my life like a project plan. My parents tried calling once, then twice, then they emailed. All of it went straight into a folder I named Aftermath. Unread. Ashley posted a vague story about toxic people trying to ruin our lives. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The truth was already doing the work for me. They wanted me erased. Disposable. The outlier. Instead, they unraveled themselves. In paperwork, in audits, in reputation damage they couldn't hide behind Christmas sweaters and Instagram captions. The day I got the letter confirming the loan had been permanently closed and every fraudulent item removed from my record, I took Murphy to Owen Beach. It was cold, windy, beautiful. The kind of quiet that feels earned. I sat on a driftwood log with him pressed against my side and realized I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't waiting for an apology that would never come. I wasn't mourning a family that had never really seen me. I wasn't thinking about the sweater or the Instagram post or the months of silence. I was thinking about how standing up for myself, really standing up, had finally cut the last string tying me to people who never deserved me. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free. When we got up to leave, I looked at Murphy and said, "Well, buddy, guess it's just us now." And honestly, that's more than enough.